Hey guys, it's your boy Cisco here with the very first published episode of the Code 3 Club podcast. We have a very special guest with us today. We have a brand new paramedic here in the Southern California area. This gentleman also works with me at the same municipal agency. But brand new paramedic, Southern California, over 2 years of experience in EMS, bright, promising future, Mr. Nestor. So I'm really honored to have you here on my podcast as the very first guest. I also want to give a shout out to your podcast, Probationary Pros. Is that correct?
Correct. Probation Pros.
Probation Pros. There we go. And the whole goal of Probation Pros is assisting people going through their probations, whether it's like, your target audience is fire.
Correct. Yeah.
Fire personnel going through probation. Your target audience. I've listened to the podcast. I like it. I was in it.
You were in it.
There's a little bit of a bias
Hopefully
there.
you like it.
Yes.
It'd be a little awkward if you didn't.
But also, I think you have a really good blog. You can go ahead and talk about that as well. But I think there's a lot of valuable information in your blog that would definitely benefit a lot of people, not just in the fire service.
Right.
All right. But I brought you on the podcast because I want to discuss your situation being a brand new paramedic working for our agency, even as an EMT, and why you even got into this in the first place.
Right. It was definitely like a life journey to get here. So like originally, even as a kid, like this was never an option for me. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in a really small town in the mountains. That's not so much of a small town anymore, but it was like my dad was always involved in it, doing like search and rescue stuff. So we were at the fire station constantly because that's where they would station out of. And so that was always a part of my life, but it was never anything I considered doing. And then it was just a ginormous journey to figure out that this is actually something I wanted to do, you know. And it all started with my brother, and he started doing this and started as an explorer and all that stuff. And then he actually like basically literally dragged me along to one of their little training drills and stuff, and I was like, holy crap, this is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then that's how I picked it up, and then now I'm the only one in it, so it's cool. You know, it was, like I said, it's definitely a journey. It's definitely hard to figure out and hard to stick with to be in this career, but
I agree with that.
For where I'm at.
I remember after I got my associates in fire, I remember all my instructors told me that it's basically 3 to 7 years before you get a permanent job.
Yeah.
For most people.
Yeah.
For most people. And then for just in case, some of our target audience doesn't really know what an explorer is. It's basically like a junior firefighter.
Correct. Yeah. You don't have any role. You don't have any rank. You're not sworn. You're not paid. I mean, if you don't show up, there's nothing that we can do about it because we don't own you. It's, you know, it's 2 drills a month, if that. And the title kind of explains it. It's there to explore if you want to do this job or not. And that's, like, I'm passionate about explorers. I think it's a super cool thing. Obviously, I was involved in it, and it helped me a lot, but it's not anything super serious. So if it's something you're looking into, or if any of your audience is looking into, that's definitely a good opportunity and a way to figure out if you really actually want to do this. Because, yeah, it's cool to be in turnouts and, like, to go cut cars or go fight fire or whatever, but when you actually have to do it, it's very different.
Oh,
very different.
For sure.
Like, you know, being a paramedic or being an EMT, it's cool in theory, but it's a lot different in real life. It's definitely a journey, and it's a journey to get here. It's a journey to stay here, and it's a journey to have a career here. So it's just a lifelong, non-stop, always working kind of life. But yeah, other than that, that's mostly me. And then now I'm doing the whole probation bros thing, which is going good. It's slowed down a bit, but that's just because of
you're at a busy stage in your life.
Busy station, busy place. Yeah, I just became a medic, all that stuff. So it'll probably pick up again.
Okay, so I really want to talk about your transition, because you're in the transition now, and we had different processes for nationally registering for the state.
Right.
I didn't do any of the online stuff. Me and my friend drove like 5 hours up to Sacramento.
Right.
To get our licenses, and I think now it's only digital, right?
Back in the dinosaur ages. Yeah.
Over a year ago.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's a thing called a phone now. No, but yeah, it's all online. And actually, I think you still have the option of going up in person and doing it.
But you don't get it same day.
But
Because if you don't get it same day, that defeats the purpose. That's the only reason why I would drive 5 hours to get my license same day.
right. Did you get your license same day if you drove up there?
Yes, sir. I drove all the way up there, got my license within like 20 minutes.
That's cool.
And then got some lunch, drove straight back home.
Sweet. What's 6 hours, right? No, I think electronically it took, I think, close to 3 weeks for me to get my license.
That's not horrible.
No, for a 10-minute application. I mean, probably not even. It's probably closer to a 5-minute application.
When I applied, the write-in or the drop-off option to get it mailed to you said anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months.
Damn.
Yeah, there was no way I was in a chance waiting 6 months.
Exactly.
I wouldn't even be here right now if I would have had to wait 6 months. The
That's
opportunity to have gotten hired would have just flew over my head.
That's crazy, dude. That's insane. It's crazy because, like, you're saying that, and I still remember, as funny as it is, like, I'm the new paramedic here, but I remember training you on your first day. And I was like, all right, Francisco, this is how we do things.
Okay. So you did EMS. We know that. We'll talk about what you did before you did EMS because it was interesting. It was a different field.
Right. Right. So even in high school, the first job I ever had, I built 5100 class, world-class race trucks. So these were kind of like sand buggies, but they would compete in like Baja 1000 and all that stuff, right? So the company I worked for was a company called Dracart, however you want to pronounce it. It's a French company, and they built the world-class 5100 trucks, and I did a lot of the machining and a lot of the tube fitting for them. So I was 15 or 16 years old when I was doing that. So I was hardcore into fabrication, welding, and I still am. It's still something I do. And then right out of high school, I built armored vehicles for a while. Then I went to EMT school, went to fire academy and all that stuff. Then I went back into welding because obviously
EMT doesn't pay the bills.
You finish fire academy and you're like, yeah, give me 2 months and I'll get hired, right? And then a year later you're like, well, I guess I'm not getting hired. Dude, like I did not want to be a medic. I had nothing. I didn't want anything to do with being a paramedic at all. And because I've been in EMS now for close to 4 years now. And like I did not want to be a medic. I didn't want to do anything else other than be a straight fireman, firefighter, EMT. That's it.
It's okay. I don't think you got to be PC on the podcast. We're labeled as explicit.
Good to know.
I'm sure they understand. Fireman, firefighter.
There you go. Yeah, I actually didn't even catch that. Shoot, it's so natural. Anyways, you know what this is about.
Yes, we know.
But yeah, so yeah, I did all that stuff, and then, like I said, once I finished all that school, then I went back into the welding field, and I was welding. I did some pipe welding in oil fields for a while, and I quickly left that one because that one just freaking sucked.
Did it pay well?
Super well. That was $65 an hour.
Holy.
Yeah, $65 an hour for 12-hour days, 7 days a week. But you can imagine why I only lasted 7 months on there when I was 19 years old, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, making great money, but with dudes that have been doing it for 40 years, and, they're all, like, salty, jaded, just hate you because you're at the same level that they are when you're 19, So it was different. It was definitely hard.
But at some point, wouldn't that be you? Like, I mean, I know you can get good at welding, but at some point, isn't there, like, you can't get any better? You can just get faster?
Kind of.
So it's like, it's kind of weird that they'd be upset at you.
Paramedic. like your first year you could be as dialed as you want, but the paramedic that barely passed medic school but has 10 years of experience is still going to do things a little bit better than you. You know? So, yeah, as a paramedic, like, you could be new and start an IV in 2 seconds, and then 10 years down the road, you might start it in 1 second. But it's like the entire technique, the entire flow, your entire assessment, your entire treatment changes, and it gets better and it gets easier. So it's like, yeah, I would struggle to weld a 6G pipe or whatever, but they would just do it easier. And sure, our welds would look the same, but they would, they were just better at it in the entirety, in the big picture of it.
Yeah, that literally makes me think of 1,000 Naked Strangers, the book we were talking about earlier today.
Yeah.
Because, so, I'm not going to talk about it on this podcast because we'll just talk about it forever. But anyone that hasn't heard of the book or hasn't read the book, go and read 1,000 Naked Strangers, A Paramedic's Wild Ride to the Edge and Back by Kevin Hazard. Really good book.
Is it like hazard, like caution hazard?
It's like 2 Z's, Hazzard. And we're not sponsored. There's zero chance that this podcast is sponsored or has any kind of funding right now.
Maybe you can have Kevin on here one day.
Oh, I would love to have Kevin on
if
the
you're listening.
podcast. If this podcast makes its way to you, please be on the podcast.
Hell yeah. And then come to Probation Pros afterwards.
Yes. There we go.
I'll pick up the sloppy seconds. It's all right.
Okay. So how do you feel that working in welding helped you for like the fire industry, EMS industry?
Work ethic for sure was one. I think any success that I had in the welding field or fabricating field was purely based on my work ethic. So we did a couple competitions in high school and everything like that, and I never made it to the national level of the competition, but it was always to the state level. And then in the state level, I competed 4 times. And 2 of the 4 times I got second place. The other 2 times I got first place. And so I was supposed to be in nationals twice, and I couldn't go for one reason or another. I just couldn't go both times. So that whole competition is actually it's an entire competition. It's called Skills USA. And it's an entire competition for everything to do with any kind of trade that's out there, whether it's window washing or like...
Window washing competition?
Yeah, there's a window washing competition. There is a dry cleaning competition. There's cabinet making competition, firefighters, police officers, welders, fabricators, woodworkers. Anything you could possibly think of that's a trade, they had a competition for.
Never in my life would I even have thought that's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Glazers, the people that install windows, stuff like that. There was competitions for it.
Do you know that there's memory competitions?
Yeah.
Though I think those are pretty cool. They're like...
I think it's cool to just remember stuff. I don't remember anything. Half the time I don't remember anything.
I can't remember when the podcast first started.
Seriously, that's a problem I have. Like, I don't remember anything, man.
Oh, it's work, dude. It's working 24 hours, being on for 5 or 6 days in a row.
Yeah.
Then you go back home and you're trying to catch up on stuff. You're like, oh, today's Friday, right? They're like, dude, today's Tuesday.
Yeah.
It happens.
Like, oh, well, all right. It's 2018, right?
I almost agreed with you.
It's funny. We're like asking these patients, hey, no questions, and we're like, wait, I don't even know.
How often do you have to look at your watch when you ask a patient what the day is?
All the time.
Every single time.
All the time. That's why I don't ask that question. I don't ask what day of the week it is. I usually ask what year it is, just because that's a little bit easier to remember, because it'll, for 365 days, it'll be 2019. You know?
It's kind of hard to forget.
It's kind of hard to forget, yeah. Except for like January, February, where you're still accidentally writing 2018.
Oh. And we're getting so close to 2020.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. But this entire year was just going to medic school for me, so.
Okay. So, what every single medic student asks a paramedic or a person that's in paramedic school, what was the hardest part of paramedic school?
All of it.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. Everything is hard. We're done. Let's wrap it up.
It was it was every day of just wanting to punch yourself in the face, and why the hell did I decide to do this type of feeling.
How long was your program? I know there are like I know certain states have like 3-year programs, 2-year programs. Tell me a little bit about your program.
So when medic school started, like when paramedics first started, it was a 2-year program, right? And then they condensed it down generally in the US to like 1 year, right? There's some places that make it a 3-year thing, but it's the same material, it's just covered over different spans of time. So ours was an accelerated program, and we did the class portion of it in 5 months. So it was based off of a work schedule, off a shift schedule, where you would go to school for 12 hours, and then get off school, and a lot of times come right back to work for another 12 hours, leave work, go back to school, leave school, go home, come back to school, go to work, leave work, come back to school, kind of stuff. So it was all that was condensed into 5 months, and then the clinical and field portion of it was put into another 4 months. So it was a total of 9 months for medic school. But, that covered the entire national scope, the entire state scope, and then obviously the regional scope where we needed to do our field internship at. So it was a nice program, but it was definitely like 10 chapters a week, 20 chapters a week, plus homework, plus all the research that you had to do on your own. So I was thankful for it. I think it's a better deal than doing like a 3-year one.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
3-year program. I better come out with like a bachelor's or something.
Seriously.
I think I don't think there's an actual degree for paramedicine.
Not in the US, there's not. I know like a lot of the more EMS forward countries like New Zealand and Australia, they'll have a bachelor's in paramedicine or an associate's in paramedicine and all that stuff.
I think we have a bachelor's, like the United States has a bachelor's in emergency management.
Right.
I think that's
it's
as close
emergency management and EMS.
There we go. Yeah, I think that's as close as we get. Mm-hmm. Somebody look that up.
Somebody needs to look that up.
We need a third guy like on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Where's your team, bro?
We need a third guy.
Team?
We're just starting.
Look it up.
We're just starting. There you go. All right. My favorite, internship was definitely the funnest. It was when you got to put everything together. I thought clinicals was the most relaxing. The only thing I didn't like about my clinicals was having to go to all the regional hospitals and drive like 2-3 hours away.
Right. I don't know. It was like a love-hate relationship with clinicals, because I felt that the amount of clinicals, we had to do 20 clinical shifts, right? Which isn't that much, but it got broken down into ER time, to OB time, to trauma room time, and all that stuff. So it was cool seeing all the different things and seeing things that you would never see as a paramedic out in the field. When you go into like the OR and you actually get to be a part of a surgery or something.
That was fun.
When you actually get to intubate with the anesthesiologist and all that stuff, it's pretty cool. And it's probably never ever going to happen again in your career as long as you're a paramedic, unless you decide to go and further your dreams or something. But I also felt like clinical time was the time where I knew the least. Like I didn't practice assessments. I didn't get to practice assessments. Intubations were difficult because I had an anesthesiologist that all he does is study how to intubate and study how to push drugs and how to DSI,
What's your melon potty score?
Exactly. What's your lemon score and all this stuff? And then I would tell him and he'd be like, no, that's wrong. It's this little stupid little nuance that makes the difference. And I'm like, but it doesn't. And, it was just a bunch of stuff like that. And then same thing, traveling to all the regional hospitals. Our medical director for the school program was in a hospital, worked as an ER doctor in a hospital that was about 2 hours away from our program. And we had to, it was part of our contract to be in that program, that we had to go do shifts in that hospital. So that was bullshit. honestly. That was bullshit because you're not paying me drive time, you're not paying my gas or anything, and you expect me to drive 2 hours where I could do the exact stuff in the same exact qualified hospital that's 30 minutes away.
Did you ever get to meet him? Like,
yeah, he's super cool, and he's very involved with the program. And
no, but like, did you get to meet him like at the hospital? Like, if he wanted you, okay, all right, at least.
Yeah, it was a lot of like, hey, you're the BBC student. Obviously, you're wearing the uniform and everything. So you're the student from the college, from my program. So just hang on my hip all day, and he kind of just carries you around like a little baby all day.
There you go. You are the wind beneath my wings.
And I was like, thanks, Doc. But so that was cool. Like, whatever code blue popped off in the hospital, we freaking sprinted to, tried to get a tube, and then got pushed away by every doctor that was there. But you know how those doctors are. And those doctor helpers, I think they're called nurses or something.
Yeah, I think they do hard work.
That's
I think
what they say. Yeah.
Allegedly.
But so I mean, it was cool. It was a cool experience. The other thing was, so our program was like super focused on, this is where you're going to do your field time. So these are the protocols you're going to learn. We'll teach you national and all that stuff, but these are the ones we want to focus on because this is where you're going to do your field time, right?
I think that's actually really useful because I had many friends that did their paramedic programs in LA or Riverside, and they got sent out of state.
Yeah.
They got sent out of state or out of county, just totally different part, and they knew nothing.
Exactly.
And it made their internship very, very hard.
Yeah. So like in that case, you get, in our case, 9 months of, these are the protocols you need to learn. This is it. This is the only thing you need to know, like all this stuff. And then you hit field and you're like, oh yeah, I know everything. I literally don't have to learn anything. I just have to perfect it. And at least you should be at that level by the time you hit field. Some of them weren't. So it was pretty evident, the ones that weren't, but
there's some in every class.
Exactly. You always have those. Like, I'm sure you were one of them, but
I can neither confirm nor deny, but I passed.
Eventually you passed, right? That's all that matters.
There you go. 8th time's a charm.
Yeah, exactly, dude. No biggie. One of our instructors had to take national 6 times, so that was cool. But she's smart. She's got experience for sure. I mean, I don't have anything on her, so what am I gonna say? So, but yeah, it was cool like that. And then, what I was getting to was that hospital where the medical director was at was in a completely different county. It was, it was a county next door, but it was a completely different county. And so going over there, we still had to, and we had permission to operate under our protocols, but it caused a massive confusion with the nurses there and everything that are
I remember.
used to
you can't do that. You can't push this.
Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm like, yes, no, I can.
Yeah, trust me.
Yes, I can.
I don't want to get in trouble either.
Your county has 2 drugs that you can push, and my county has 28. Like, it's a difference. Or 21 or whatever. However many drugs you have. I don't remember. I should know this, but I don't know. We have 20-something.
We can pull up. I feel like I should definitely know this because I've been a medic longer.
I know all the drugs we have. I just never counted them.
We just don't ever really count them.
They're just not in a numerical list for me.
So we actually have 22 drugs that we can give in our county.
Oh, that's right. We got 1 extra recently.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
and
22.
Out of all those, there's certain situations where for 4 of them, we have to make base hospital contact.
Correct.
There we go.
Yes. 4 of them, we have to make base hospital contact, which is different now. And that was definitely like a challenging thing during my schooling and my field internship. Was that so we had like a bunch of major changes to our protocols, right? And so we used to have a lot of liberty, and I think our county and our EMSA is pretty well known for having that liberty of
Cowboy County
stuff. Yeah, exactly. Where, hey, this is what I want to do. Let's call the doctor, just CYA, and doctor's gonna agree. It's okay. Like, I'm gonna give 25 milligrams of albuterol for sepsis. It's all good. Like, I just need a CYA. And now that we have all these changes and a lot of that has gone away, which, is a good thing because it's not stuff that we know It's not stuff that.
I think a lot of it is like we just didn't use it. Like the albuterol,
Yeah.
we could do it. How
Yeah.
often did we use it?
Exactly.
So like with the glucagon for choking, how often
Exactly.
did we do it? I think I had, fortunately, I think I had the opportunity to use magnesium as a smooth muscle relaxer for like asthma attacks like twice.
Mm-hmm.
One time, to be honest, I was a little chicken about it, and I was like, ugh. But the second time, by the time the patient was packaged, they were being treated, and we were at the point where we needed it, we were like 5 minutes from the hospital. No physician is going to give you magnesium if I'm 5 minutes away from the hospital.
Right. Yeah, that definitely makes it difficult, for sure. But while all of that was going on, I was in internship. So it was a lot of like, hey, you need to prove that you're a paramedic and that you know what you're doing. And you also need to teach us the new protocols.
So don't get wild with your stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a lot of like, hey, it was a lot of just being humble. It was a lot of just shutting up and just learning your lesson. And then it was a lot of like, all right, now it's your turn to sit the fuck down. Because this is the new protocol and you're wrong.
You're about to learn today.
Exactly. And then you'd go run a call and they'd be like, well, you fucked that up. You're like, okay. So it was challenging in that aspect too. But
Okay, so you were saying you didn't want anything to do with paramedicine when you first
No.
started. So what changed your mind?
no, working here
With our agency?
with our agency. Yeah. Because so in between the whole welding and where I'm at now phase, I worked as a rescue technician too. So we did high angle rope rescue, confined space rescue, LARO, obviously the medical stuff. We did search and rescue, all that stuff. So
Did you ever go out of state?
Yes, we went to Arizona a couple times. The team went to Germany. I didn't go, unfortunately, but the team went to Germany. We had a couple offshore assignments as well. But in that second, in that time span, it was definitely like, oh yeah, being an EMT is pretty easy. And I believe it or not, I was like the most experienced EMT that was there with my year of experience. I was the most experienced EMT, so I was like always the lead EMT and stuff. And I think that definitely attributed to actually knowing my shit, you know?
It's a lot of pressure when you're
Yeah.
the senior medic or the senior EMT.
When you're the
senior
lead
anything.
EMT and you're 19 years old and everyone else is 30 and they're all other EMTs too. And it's like, all right, well, apparently I'm the only one that knows this, so I'm in charge, I guess.
EMT save paramedics.
Right? Shoot, we can't even save ourselves. So yeah, I left that. I came here and realized how much I didn't know when it came to working with a paramedic. And it was just like, thankfully when I started here, I had a lot of really, really good partners and a lot of really, really bad ones. So it was very early on exposure to, this is what I should be like, this is what I shouldn't do, this is all the things that will get me in trouble, and all that stuff, you know? So over the year, because it was a year I was here, or 11 months that I was here before I decided to go to medic school. And that entire time it was like every day you're just learning something. Every day it's like you have this question because you read this call in the textbook and then you actually run it and you're like, what the heck is he doing? Why the heck is he doing that? Like, you don't need to start an IV for that. Why are you doing that? And then you ask him and they're like, oh yeah, it's because, what if they crash?
Well,
what if they go into CPR? You can't get theoretically you can't get an IV or whatever. And it's like now you have one in place and you're like, oh my God, holy crap, this is a completely different way of thinking now.
It's like giving nitro without having an IV.
Yeah.
You could have a bad time.
Right. And it all comes down to experience when it comes to that. And like, what's your experience been with giving nitro and without having an IV, or, if you've given nitro without an IV and a patient's never dumped on you, I think you wouldn't really care until it does happen to you. And then you're like, yep, never doing that again. So Yeah. It's different, you know, but we all get there. That's how we learn.
It's like, honestly,
Unfortunately, that's how we learn.
sometimes the lack of knowledge is embarrassing. Like, I remember I had just under 3 years of 911 experience in LA and Orange County as a BLS provider, right, on a double EMT box.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I knew enough. I knew I wasn't the best EMT, but I thought I could function. And I remember going into paramedic school, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to take this next step. I had no idea nasal tracheal intubation was even a thing.
Yeah.
At that time, I hadn't even seen an intubation performed. I had seen CPAP done maybe twice. So the lack of knowledge was just embarrassing. I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm really ready.
Yeah.
And then, as luck would have it, after that, like the first month or two after that, everything just started coming on board. Like, we were having intubations all the time. And like, again, maybe it was just because of my area. Hospitals were so close, and like the cardiac arrest protocols were set in a certain way where you didn't always have to intubate.
Right.
The ELS airway was fine. Just
Right.
pick up, take off. It's only 5 minutes to the closest hospital anyway. Why have the opportunity to mess up an advanced airway?
Right. Yeah. I think that's definitely a big problem in a lot of areas. And I think California is actually okay when it comes to that, when making that transition to EMT to paramedic.
Dude,
because we have to make a transition.
The state protocol for EMT and paramedics is actually not bad in California.
You're right.
A lot of the local protocols are what's
way more restricted.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, obviously your audience can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think California is one of the only places, maybe except for Oregon and Washington, where you have to be an EMT before you become a paramedic. You know, and a lot of other places you can go straight to paramedic school without being an EMT. Or you just have to go to EMT school and then you can sign up next semester for paramedic school.
I knew of someone that went to an EMT school where if you place in the top 10%, something like that, you were eligible to apply straight to paramedic school.
Right.
So that person did.
Right.
And in their state, you did your clinicals, and after clinicals, you could test for your paramedic license. And your internship was basically on-the-job training.
Right.
That was wild.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild to think you could be on a box, single function, treating people in the 911 system and not have like a single 911 call underneath your belt. Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's definitely a bad thing. I think that's definite. It's very hard to spin that into light and to spin that into a good way, just because that's not right. Like, that is, especially, it's okay for doctors, and it's understandable for doctors, because you have 10 plus years of schooling. You're confident.
And you have that support team, like no matter what, even if you show up to a call and you have an engine and a truck and another box, that's not the same as having the whole hospital line backing you.
And having other doctors to call and all this stuff. Like, it's very different. And a lot of the times these doctors aren't making life or death decisions in a matter of seconds, you know? Whereas I think one of the things that makes a good paramedic is experience. It's, you know, it's a saying that I definitely believe is a good EMT makes a great paramedic, you know? And yeah, sometimes it's not true, sometimes it falls through, but I think that whole experience thing is super necessary. However, even with California's expectations and guidelines to how long you have to be an EMT, I think it's 6 months of full-time. 6 months of part-time and 1,000 hours, right?
It's 6 months and or 1,000 hours in 911.
In 911 system.
Yeah.
However, there's a big loophole of I work on an IFT box as
for
an
a
EMT
911 company.
For a 911 company. Therefore, it's a 911 system. But I've never ran a 911 call in my life, you know? And then they go to paramedic school and they're like, what's a saline lock? You know?
I had like two people when I went to paramedic school that were in a similar thing. They were for a 911 company, but they only did IFTs, and they struggled.
Yeah. There was a lot of, while my class was going, there was an adjacent class that was going. That was the traditional, like, year-long paramedic school. And that class had, I think, probably like 10 of them were from IFT companies. And it was to the instructors, to us we were like a month or a class basically ahead of them at all times. So a lot of times they would ask us to just go in there for one, refresh our lesson that we had, and then two, would like to help them out, help that class out if they were struggling with anything.
You know who was in that situation but actually did great?
Who?
Fox.
Ken Fox? Yeah.
This man is the definition of a paragod. Mr.
Yeah.
Ken Fox, 100% respect wherever you are now, probably on the airship. But from our knowledge, this man came from a IFT company, had not a single day of experience in the 911 system, killed it in paramedic school, and is one of the best medics that I know to this day.
Yes, absolutely.
Killed it.
One of the best paramedics. Probably one of the best I've ever met.
We're going to insert like a clapping audio clip right here.
Hell yeah. That's what's up, dude. But, I mean, yeah, and that I think that definitely just goes to show where he recognized, like, holy shit, I suck. You know, because he was telling us stories of, like, his first call in his internship, in his paramedic internship, without ever having run a 911 call before. And now he was, like, shaking, trying to start an IV and all this stuff, you know.
That's wild.
And how in the first month he was in the crew, in the cab, in the engine, and the crew told him, like, yeah, you're not going to make it, dude. Like, you're not going to make it.
That's so tough because that's halfway through. That's halfway through your internship.
And he made it, you know. And then from there on, and he's only been a paramedic for like 4 years or 3 years or something like that. He's not been a paramedic that long, but he is so freaking smart. And I think that goes to show work ethic.
Hear me out. What if we get Fox on the podcast?
Hell yeah, dude.
Oh, it's going to become his podcast.
You know what I think too is, like, he's a great paramedic and he's a great person.
Yeah, I think that's
that's
a huge part.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part as well. Because, like, so he was obviously one of my instructors and everything, and he was like the only instructor I could totally just walk up to and be like, hey, I got a question about this or whatever.
And like zero judgment, like he wanted
like whatever it is, right? And then he'll tell you the answer, make sure you know it, and then he'll fuck with you the entire time, right? He'll just talk shit to you, but it was, yeah, I don't think I could have enjoyed the actual didactic classroom portion of paramedic school if it wasn't for him. So he taught art cardiology. He's a freaking brainiac when it comes to cardiology too, in EKGs. But yeah, he's teaching us hemi blocks and RADs and all that stuff. It's like, holy shit. But yeah, it's a lot of things that come into play when it comes to that. But
so then what's your plan now for paramedicine and being a paramedic, being freshy fresh?
I'm just a little fish out of the water, man. Just trying to swim along. Just keep swimming. I think at this point it's just, I've established myself, I've made it to being an actual paramedic, to actually having a little blue license that says Paragod on it, you know, but it's
Paragod.
It's at this point it's just, all right, time to freaking learn. Time to really learn, you know, because it's like, my experience as a paramedic is the 2 months I have on internship. That's it. And even then, like, if I was about to mess up, I got saved. You know, which thankfully didn't happen, but it's me or it's me. You know, there's no one to blame other than myself now. No one messed up their meds. No one did something wrong other than me. And, you know, that's how it is. So I think right now it's just, I'll probably stay here because I think this is an outstanding place to get experience.
This is a great place to be.
Yeah,
yep, 100%.
This is a crazy fucking county. This is an insane place to work and to learn. And I think being a paramedic here is definitely a one-up from a lot of other places, despite some whatever negatives are there. But I think there's just, like I mentioned earlier, I think experience is one of the biggest parts. So,
and then real quick for districts or areas, jurisdictions that do run like double BLS boxes and stuff like that. I remember sometimes I would do certain things or say certain things or ask certain questions, and the paramedic would always be like, well, that's my license. And it never really sunk in until I went to paramedic school that paramedic was 100% right. When you make that transition, that's something that you have to be well aware of, that if you are the lead medic on scene, any decision that is made technically falls on you.
Right.
If you work in an area where you're on a 1-in-1 box, or if you're on a double ALS box in a certain counties, in order for it to be a paramedic unit, it has to be 2 paramedics. Right. So you need to know that whatever your EMT does, whatever somebody else does, falls on your license.
Right.
So now I get it. Whenever all those other paramedics were like, hey, maybe don't do this right now, or don't do that, or kind of slap my pee-pee a little bit, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. I would have been irritated too.
Just a little pinky slap, don't worry.
Yeah.
That's all they need. Yeah, it's completely different, because I did the same thing with my medics too.
You're like, what's the big deal?
Yeah. And
then you're like, well, there's a really big deal. How about you let me do my assessment? Because I need to know what I got to do.
Shut the fuck up and let me do my thing. Yeah. Yeah, it's insane. It's a completely different world. It's a completely different world. And, like, I can understand why some medics think that they are paragods and that they are, like, the greatest thing to ever happen to EMS. Because you definitely feel like that coming out, you know? You definitely know some stuff. Any situation you can basically handle, or you'll figure out how to handle, which is, one of the assets of, in my opinion, being a good medic, is figuring out how to handle whatever it is.
Using the twin pack to get the blood sugar from the IV catheter.
Yeah.
Using a nasal cannula to irrigate a human's eyes.
Right. Diluting your own 1 in 100 epinephrine or whatever. 1 in 10 epinephrine.
To get 1 in 100,000.
1 in 100,000 epinephrine. Yeah. You learn a lot, but that whole licensing definitely changes things. For sure. Because, when I was an EMT, or I still am an EMT.
we're all
I'm in
EMTs.
the transition. I'm in the transition. But when I was only an EMT and didn't know anything else, it was always like, dude, are you really going to take the why do you want me to stop the ambulance so you can start a freaking IV? Like, come on. You're a paramedic. You should be able to do this in the back of a moving ambulance.
Shots fired.
Right? And it's like, no, this freaking person has tiny little veins, and this person needs whatever it is that they need right now. And if I don't get it right now, then it's a freaking problem.
Especially if you're going for the EJ. Like, if extremities are shot and you're going for the EJ and you can't even get the EJ because of blows or even that's poor vasculature,
right? And
the next option is IO, you got to be able to justify that at the hospital too. Hey, this person was so critical.
Right.
I needed an IO.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's a huge part too, is justifying anything that you do, because it's your license, like you said. And it's like, yeah, I can't justify giving someone 200 micrograms of fentanyl off the bat, no matter what, And if I do, I'll probably still lose my license.
It's like, I understand this is the president's son, but I cannot give 200 mics right now.
Exactly. So it's different. That's it, though.
Future paragod Nestor, the man. The man, the man, the myth, the legend.
Yep.
What advice would you have for future paramedic students or current EMTs that are thinking about going to paramedic school, aka future paramedic students?
Sit down, be humble.
All right, Kendrick.
Literally, it's sit the fuck down, shut the fuck up, buckle up, and just fucking work. It's 12 months, 9 months, 3 years, whatever, of just keeping your head in the books. And if you don't know it in and out, upside down, then you don't know it.
Yep, you pretty much just got to put in the work. That's what medical school is. If you don't put in the work, it doesn't matter what. It's pretty much just putting in the work. There's nothing anyone else can really do for you or teach you. If you're not willing to learn, then you're not going to do very well.
Yeah, and it's something that, like, this career is. I think it's just very different. And it's one of the reasons why this career and, like, being a firefighter and all that stuff is very honorable, because it's like, this isn't McDonald's or basically any other career where you can kind of know what you're doing. Like, you have to know what you're doing. You have to. In and out, with no excuses. And I think that's something that gets overlooked and isn't stressed as much as it should be. But that's how I took it. And I think that's definitely a reason why I got to where I'm at, and the reason why, as gloaty and as braggy as this sounds, why I have the reputation that I have, is because I understand that. So that's my biggest advice, is just, sit down, shut up, pay attention. Don't let all your other medic school friends that are sitting next to you saying, man, this is so fucking boring, or this is bullshit, or why the fuck do I need to know this? Like, I don't need to know about the fucking sodium potassium pump. I just need to know when to give fucking adenosine. That's it. Like, no, fucking pay attention and actually learn it, because it's going to come in handy.
Yeah, it's literally
Absolutely.
the little things that you don't always need, but when you do need them, you're like, oh, I'm really glad I remember this from class, from school. I'm glad my preceptor made me do this project or this class on blank and blank.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my biggest advice for sure.
Well said. Now, let's talk about your podcast. Let's talk about your blog, Probation Pros.
Yeah, so that's my whole thing. I started that, probably around September-ish. Probably, September-ish is when I started it. And yeah, like we mentioned earlier, it's focused mostly on fire. It definitely has some more paramedic stuff and EMS stuff, and it's gonna have a lot more on it eventually. But I realized there was just a huge lack of information available to probationary firefighters, or just people in the fire service and a fire department, that, unfortunately we're going into these positions as, I don't know what the fuck is going on, and like most any other job, you learn a lot on the job, but I think it was super important, and I thought it would have been nice when I started to have, this website where I could just find, and it was just a gold mine of information that would just make my life easier, So I decided to start that. It's, Probation Pros on WordPress. So probationpros.wordpress.blog, .com. And, it's a whole bunch of blogs on topics, on ways to improve yourself, on study habits, on the mindset that you need to have during probation and all that stuff. And along with it is the Probation Pros podcast, which right now we are on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and a couple other places. Basically anywhere where you can find a podcast, you can have ours. And they're right now.
Well, if you're listening to this podcast, you're pretty much just listening on Apple Podcasts. So there's that.
His podcast is way better than mine, though. Guarantee you that.
Oh, so I'm flattered. Thank you. I'm trying to pull up your blog right now so we can talk about it right here. The hotspot Wi-Fi is garbage. It's garbage.
Yeah, I mean, it has a lot of good information, and it has a couple of these random guests that write stuff for me, One
the
of them
podcast.
Being Cisco. Yeah, one of them being Cisco.
It's almost like we're helping each other out with
weird,
our projects.
Right? It's like that's what we do or something, It's so strange that people actually help each other nowadays. But, I mean, there's some things on there that are for sure a little bit controversial. And I think if your captain read them versus if the probie read them, it would be two completely different mindsets,
Is this the most recent post?
80% of the posts.
That's just your muse.
Yeah.
Your the person or the group that helps you produce your content.
Yeah. I think it's just change.
But also, I mean, aren't all tips needed for probation out of like difficult circumstances or situations? Like, there wouldn't be a probation pros, there wouldn't be any difficulties in probation if you didn't encounter those difficult things. So regardless of who causes issues or problems, confrontations, or lack of knowledge, whatever it is, in the probationary individual themselves, or if it's the external environment, it's these kind of things that even lead to that.
That
or else
mold
there'd be no point in having a year probation if there wasn't going to be any issues, right? The most important thing, one of the most important things in the probation is making sure you fit in with the department or organization, right?
Right.
It does you no good to be goody two shoes, sits down, cleans boots, cooks dinner, but never talks to anybody.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just different things. I think by the time that us 20-something-year-olds become 50-year-old captains or chiefs or whatever, it's going to be a completely different fire service.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
100%. Like, it's already changed a lot in the past, like, 10, 15, 20 years.
Which is just 30. What like, I want to get the big picture of in probation pros. That's definitely a big part of it as well, is understand that, like, what you think is right or what you think is fair could be completely different from what your captain thinks is fair or what your captain thinks is right. Because I know, like, one of the posts is mostly about how it's so hard to be the new guy because no one wants to teach you, right? Because everyone wants you to earn, but no one wants to give, right? So I think that's one of the traits and the mentalities that, in my opinion, hopefully, the newer generation of firefighters will change.
All right. Agreed. So now we're currently on your blog right now. And again, if you guys didn't catch it before, it is probationpros.wordpress.com. Probationpros.wordpress.com.
Correct.
That number again is
1-800.
There we go. So I have the most recent post here is Family Life of a Firefighter. And there's a really cool picture with these firefighters, and they're shooting a straight stream.
Mm-hmm.
And your quote, let's read your quote, because the quotes are actually pretty
Quotes
good.
are part of it,
Yeah. Other things may change us, but we start and end with the family. Anthony Brandt?
Mm-hmm. Anthony Brandt, yep. So that one really resonated with me because it made me think of the day, right? Where when you leave in the morning, for example, neither of us are married or anything like that, but we both still have family at home. And we leave in the day, early in the morning, and we say goodbye to whoever's there, right? They're always like, all right, take care, good luck, I'll see you in 48 hours or in 15,000 days or whatever it is, in 10 years when I don't even recognize you anymore, right?
Come back with a full beard, peppered hair.
Yeah, feels like it sometimes. But you come back to your second family at work, and then same thing. Every morning, before every call, when you leave the station after shift, you tell your partner, all right, dude, we'll see ya, good luck, take care, drive safe, whatever, and then you go back to your family. So I think that one was definitely a big part of how to cope with living with that too, those two ends of the spectrums.
And that's why getting along with your department or your agency is so important, because regardless of when you get hired, in most people typically like early to mid 20s, you're potentially spending a third of your entire life in your fire station.
Correct. Yeah.
Or that's a long time.
On average, if you did a 30-year career here, you would be spending 96,000 hours at work. If you worked 56 hours only.
Mm-hmm.
Which is insane.
Which we know never happens. We work way more.
Insane, yeah.
So I think that's a really good post. Very important. And again, very stressed. This is a third of your life. You got to fit in. Right. This is your second family.
Right.
And sometimes it's your first family, depending on what's going on in your personal life. Your second post, which I think is just as important, is make your application great. So that has to do with making sure that you follow directions, that you actually submit your application, that you fulfill the requirements, correct?
Correct, yeah. Which strangely is one of the biggest downfalls when it comes to applying for jobs is just the poor and lack of attention to detail.
Huge thing. If you don't fulfill the requirements, don't apply.
Right.
Because working for the fire service and working for police and even some certain aspects of EMS, it's not like other jobs where you can just apply and wing it and get the interview, get the job. If you're fortunate enough that happens, good for you. But if you're not, when you progress forward to the point where you're in backgrounds with the department, some investigators look into that.
Right.
They look. So you've applied for 50 departments, but for some reason you've only ever advanced with like 10.
Right.
And they look into it and they'll be like, oh, well, XYZ department says here you weren't even a nurse practitioner, flight medic, 5-year fire captain before applying for this firefighter entry-level position.
With a PhD.
With a PhD.
Yeah.
So not every department is like that. Not every investigator is going to be like that. But these applications, they rack up quickly. And that's something you have to do if you want to get hired. I myself, before coming here, even then I applied to like 15, 16 departments.
Right.
And I know of people that have literally applied to 50 departments before even getting their foot in the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, I think one of the funny things is that people will apply to 50 departments and never get an interview. And they're like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with these departments. I have everything they're asking for. And it's like, these things are so stupid and they're so specific and everything. And I'm like, well, how's your application? Because obviously you've never made it past the application period if you've never gotten an interview. So what are you fucking up on your application? Oh, well, I just fill out everything they ask for. Okay, do you have everything they ask for? Oh, no, not every time. Well, there you go. Step
There's
1,
your problem.
fix your fucking application.
And meet deadlines.
And meet deadlines.
Don't ever try and go to a department. Hey, I know applications closed last week, but I was busy. Guess what? We're busy too. There's 5 openings and there's over like 20,000 applicants.
Yeah, we could give a shit less about you. That meet the basic requirements.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to give every single post away because I know you have a handful of posts, and I've read a lot of them. I think they're really good. We'll stop at this one because I feel like from the first post to the second post to this one, we're kind of going almost in priority of which is more important. They're all equally important, but this is something you really have to ask yourself. This post is titled, "Is this for you?"
Right. Yeah. That was definitely a big personal one. Because as actually, you know this very well, I was in a period where I was like, well, fuck this. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to wait around another 5 years to keep being told no. And it was just the moment of, like, sitting down and really, really figuring it out. And in the process of it, it was like a list of things that I figured out, that I thought about, that were like, hey, you know what? Other people should know this too. Like, other people should think about this before investing 5 years of their life in chasing after a career.
And that's perfect. So I definitely want to mention the quote that you have on this post. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. Yeah. Steve Jobs. That's an amazing quote. That's a great quote.
Yep. I'm a firm believer in that. Firm believer.
That even goes into like certain departments' cultures. Like, it's not always easy to find out the culture of a department, but sometimes it's just not going to be for you.
Right. Right.
Like, let's say you hate working like brush. You hate brush. Probably shouldn't work. Like, for California, you probably shouldn't work up north. There's going to be a lot of brush.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't like working, if you don't like medical aids, you probably shouldn't work somewhere urban.
Right.
Or, you know, like,
go to FDNY.
Oh, it'll be great. You'll love it there.
Yeah.
You never run medical aids in New York.
You just do compressions after you pull someone out of a car or something. Yeah, that's all you got to do.
There you go. All right. All right, Nestor, before we wrap this up, is there anything else you want to let the audience know?
Definitely listen to Cisco. He's definitely got all the answers for you. Any question you'll ever have, he'll be able to answer for you.
You know, they used to call me a human dictionary and almanac when I was a little kid. Huh?
What?
Huh? Yeah, they used to call
the human almanac?
Yeah, because I used to know tons of little random facts and little
facts. Tell
things.
me one.
Huh?
Tell me one.
The very first banana that was ever discovered was actually inedible, and it was a different color. It wasn't yellow. And the species of banana that we consumed up until like the early 2000s went pretty much extinct because we were growing it or like eating too much of it. It was like a straight banana. I don't know if you remember. It was like a pretty big banana. It was like 8 or 10 inches.
No.
Some people don't think that's big, but
I mean, that's pretty average for me.
Yeah, but apparently that banana isn't really popularly, if that's a word, grown. And that's why we have the Chiquita bananas now, the curved.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess in the early 2000s, that wasn't really a thing. The straight banana was more popular than the curved.
That is pretty
and
crazy.
Another random thing, eggs don't have to be refrigerated. They're pasteurized.
Right.
I remember as a kid, I'd walk into the store and all the eggs on their cartons were not outside, but they were like in open air.
Right.
They're not going to go bad.
Well, if you think
within
about
a reasonable amount of time.
Right. If you think about it, like when the chicken lays the egg, it stays out there. Obviously, theoretically, the egg is going to eventually hatch and everything, but when we pasteurize them and when we kill everything inside, just don't break the egg.
And you're good. It's like skin. Don't
crazy.
cut if you don't cut your skin. If your skin is in good condition, you're fine. You're probably not going to get sick.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Code 3 Club. This was our first published episode. You have a lot of things to look forward to, such as interviews with dispatchers for private ambulance companies, police officers. We're going to try and get one of our local ER physicians on this too. Lots of exciting stuff. I have a few people that are internet meme kings and queens. So you guys have a good day. Make sure that you listen to the Probation Pros podcast and that you also check out probationpros.wordpress.com. This is Cisco and Nestor signing out.
Thank you. See ya.